Hello and welcome back to the latest episode of the Big 12 Huddle. I'm one of your two co-hosts here. My name is Calvin with the CGA Tour podcast from the Oklahoma State kind of affiliate here for the College Huddle Network. And I'm joined tonight, of course, by Knight Bengal from the Knighted Ones podcast here, the other host, the UCF affiliate for the College Huddle podcast network. So, Roger, Knight Bengal, how's it going?
It's going great, man. We're going 1-0 against the bye this week, and Hoops is definitely showing some teeth this year. So it was a big experiment. We'd see what would happen. You know, a lot of people were saying Last Chance U at UCF, and so far Last Chance U is racking up the wins. So rack them, as some other show says at times.
There we go. Yeah, no, I love it for sure. Yeah, in Stillwater, we also have the bye week. We'll probably find a way to lose it though. But we, at least in basketball, are undefeated. We're recording this here on Wednesday night, and we play a hoops game tomorrow night in Stillwater. So against Southern Illinois. But our first game that's of some substantial kind of teams or so is starting next week. So we'll talk more.
The Salukis, something like that.
Illinois. I think
it's the Salukis.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Cool. I had no idea, honestly. All I know is it's at 8 p.m. tomorrow night, so I'll be tuned in, ready to go. You're gonna have to watch that one, 8 p.m. Eastern. But yeah, I'm excited for hoop season here to start up. Wrestling preseason rankings came out. We're projected to finish third in the country here with a new head coach. Oklahoma State is. So that's getting everyone fired up in Stillwater too.
So are you an Oklahoma State homer or what? Because I don't think anybody else in the Big 12 knows that.
If no one else in the Big 12 knew anything about wrestling, I would be shocked. But I mean, we got 50 something national championships as a school. I think 53 in all sports, and it's the most in the Big 12. It's the third or fourth most in the entire country, but 30 plus national championships in wrestling. I believe it's 33. So yeah, I'm gonna know about wrestling. And yeah, I'm Oklahoma State homer. If you're not watching this on YouTube, you're not seeing the jersey I got on with Barry Sanders throwback. You know, I mean, I've got the whole deal, got the background. I mean, aren't you a UCF homer a little bit? Maybe you're calling it fair and square, but I'm also just saying. I also just said, hey, we're third in the country in wrestling projected wise. I'm not necessarily saying I think we're going to finish first or anything.
I think what's happening right now is Calvin's wanting to prove the wrestling prowess of OSU. Thankfully, I am all the way in Florida, and he is not within the state. That being said, I did verify, to borrow your catchphrase there, it is the Salukis. So I was correct. It is the Salukis that you will be playing tomorrow night.
Well, they have a negative 2.13 strength schedule. So cool.
I don't know how that happens, but two teams that did not have a negative 1.23456 pi over divided by 3 strength of schedule was BYU and Utah. The renewal of the great, one of the great rivalries that had not been played for, what was it, 13, 14 years?
Yeah, pretty close to that. So to end out the game, in case anyone missed it here.
Man, you're going right to it, aren't you?
Well, you changed topics for me here. You know, you hit me on the fly with that, so I might as well just dive right in. Basically at the end of the game here, BYU starts the ball in their own territory at the 9-yard line with 1:48 left. They have 3 downs in a row that have incomplete passes, and on the fourth play there, 4th and 10, there somehow is a timeout called. And the play had already almost basically happened. So you want to go back and watch that, check it out, please do, because the play after that is the holding call that's made every single social media. If you've been following the Big 12 whatsoever, you know what I'm talking about. Defensive holding is not a common call in college football. I'm not telling anyone any new information here, but it was called, and it was almost called after the play completely ended. Now, defensive holding does not stop play mid-play. It is one of the calls that you actually play throughout the play anyways. But, hey, it was called, and Utah defender immediately knew, you've got to be kidding me. And depending on which angle you have on it, it could have been holding, could not have been. That's not for me to decide here as the neutral party. I'm going to say, hey, you know what? It's close
You're
enough. I'm
exactly
fine
who
with that.
should decide because you
Saying
are.
right now. I'm saying right now. If you let me keep going,
All right,
come on,
go,
man.
go, go.
Come on, Bengal. Come on. You got to interject here every 5 seconds. I love it though. Keep me on my toes. But no, what I'm saying here is that they're the defender here for Utah was like, oh man, you gotta be kidding me. And that's one of those that's close enough where I'm going, you know what? You just stopped him for 4 straight plays, basically. Why can't you stop him 4 more times here when they get the ball on their 19? Because they get the first down. So they weren't able to do that either. And then, you know, BYU goes all the way down the field, gets in field goal range, is able to run at the clock well enough where, basically you're just doing the pitchy woo woo, as Chris Berman would say on Sports Center Top 10, trying to get, the last 3-6 seconds of the game to get a touchdown for Utah because they had no time left. BYU was able to manage the clock well enough. So with the timeout in 4th and 10, basically after the play had been called dead mid-play for a timeout, that's aggravating in itself. Then the holding call that I'm sure every Utah fan in the entire world, and if I was a Utah fan, I get where you're coming from. You've got to be kidding me. That's a holding call. It's just rough. Then, of course, once we figure out everything that goes into that, these refs were Pac-12 refs last year. So they not only left the Pac-12, they also joined with Utah, the Big 12, at the same time. And from my understanding here of reading everything, they were let go by the Pac-12. Because, of course, the Pac-12 still exists, as everyone knows. Grant's only got 2 teams in it, but still's going. They could still have been Pac-12 refs this year if their contract had been renewed, etc. But instead, they did not get that contract renewed, joined the Big 12. And after the game, that's where part of the Utah AD's comments come from here of, hey, we were robbed. Is because he feels as though last year they also had some calls that did not go their way. I do not have specific examples except for the fact that he is standing on more than just that game. There is a little bit more going into it. I'm sure as the game's going on, that has to be going through the AD's mind as well here. Now, what Brett Yormark came out and said afterwards is, yeah, we're fining him $40,000 because that is not the right way to go about and voice your complaint and concern. I, of course, agree with that. It's just not a great look for the conference when you have an AD come out and anyone who doesn't know, that's not a thing. ADs do not do the football after game press conference. Now, I don't know. Maybe UCF has once or twice here, and I'm completely
No,
confused
no,
because you're
there
looking
was
at me like I'm wrong. But
no,
I
no, no.
think I'm
I'm not.
110% right here. There's no AD who comes and does the press conference post game. Now, maybe the Monday presser, maybe the end of the season, but that still is a maybe. That's never a normal thing, anyways.
Yeah, I mean um, TCU had a situation where, or was it Baylor? Maybe it was Baylor that it was Baylor that their AD threw a fit in the middle of the press conference too, but the head coach was there. That's the only thing I mentioned by that. Yeah, but for those of you that don't know, the Utah AD is Mark Harlan. I know a little bit about him because he was the AD for the Cows. Didn't do so hot there. Happened to be hired over at Utah. We talked to our college huddle brethren over from the Utah podcast, and they pretty much said he's universally disliked. The thing I think that makes this more inflammatory, just than that it's out of the ordinary, is the fact that the Pac-12, some of the Pac-12 teams, and specifically Utah, when the Pac-12 Big 12 quote unquote rivalry was happening for who was going to get the best TV contract and who was going to pick off who, with the famous George Kliakoff losing that battle with Brett Yormark. Utah was one of those institutions that was kind of stomping their feet and saying they were too good for the Big 12. Their fans may not necessarily have felt that way, but they certainly were boisterous on Twitter. We all have our fans and all of our fan bases that take it a little too far, but by and large, the Pac-12 dispute, as it says, and he not only said that, hey, we were robbed, but he was basically putting down the Big 12 itself, not just the refs, but the Big 12 itself. What's interesting, which I didn't know until you brought it up, was the Pac-12 refs were fired by the Pac-12. Now, I will, having been in the conference just a little bit, right? This is our second year in the conference playing football. The Big 12 refs have been absolutely atrocious, even when we played them out of conference. That being also, and I'm trying to avoid, now I'm starting to fall into your trap. They also, this is the first year where it's been instituted that the Big 12 refs are actually reviewed. In the past, there was no review of the Big 12 refs' performance. They weren't evaluated and they weren't penalized, I guess, for a better lack of a better word, for their performance. So, I think Scott Harlan's got to. I know this is a heated rivalry. I know Utah is not playing as well as they expected to this, or all of us expected it, expecting them to this year. OSU the same way, UCF the same way. However, what makes this more inflammatory is that he goes after the Big 12 after all of that stuff went down with the Pac-12. So he's clearly not happy he's here. He's clearly that you got to do better. I think he's frustrated. I think he's got a lot of pressure from the fan base. I think he's got a lot of pressure from the donors, but you just don't do that. I'm sorry. Now, Rhodes did the same thing, which I don't think that's, and I think he did it for basketball, but I don't think that's something that you should be doing for your program and as the representative of your program. So, it's interesting. It's the Holy War. It's a big one. It's one of those games that if you have a bad season all year long, if you beat that one rival, then the season's okay. It's the same thing with Ohio State and Michigan. If Michigan is 10-0 heading into your game and you've got a mediocre 7-win season and you beat Michigan either at home or away, then your season's okay. Your head coach is okay. That's what the Holy War is. So I get it, but I think that's a byproduct of the pressure that he's receiving from the fans and everything else based on how the season has gone this far versus what the expectations were for this Utah team, not just by Utah fans, but also nationally.
Yeah, there's been several instances where the referees for an Oklahoma State game, whether they have been Big 12 refs or not, because there is a very famous non-conference game Oklahoma State played against Central Michigan in 2017 that the refs definitely just completely botched. But besides that one, there are several times where we play OU, and it seems to be in the same type of scenario here that Utah is mad about. Closer to the end of the season, the team that seems to be let off the hook and has all the penalties and stuff go their way is the team that has the projections to make the college football playoffs, or at least the BCS national championship game, or old college football playoffs, etc., conference championship game. Whereas if they lose to Oklahoma State, oh my gosh, wait, what in the heck? And so it always seems like there's a couple of plays. Justin Gilbert's INT, for example, for anyone curious. There's always just a couple of ones that have always been like, oh man, if that had just gone. But I'm in the standpoint now of, all right, listen, like OU's gone and Oklahoma State, we haven't won a game in conference. So I'm not trying to talk about the referees necessarily for Oklahoma State here, because that's not our issue. I do think it's funny that Utah has not won a game since they beat Oklahoma State back in September 21st. Now, there's also the funny thing that Oklahoma State hasn't won a game either, and Arizona's also down with us in the bottom of the, you know, bottom of the standings here in the Big 12 as well. But all three of those teams have one thing in common, and that's they're projected to finish at the top of the Big 12 conference this year, and instead the opposite has happened. So
Well,
I
I
don't
think
think any of those three teams could stand at all on referees dictating any of the games in a broader aspect. Maybe this one
no,
game you talk to me mad about, but I mean, to me, you're 4-5. It's not like you were going, I mean, yeah, you would have knocked him off. Yeah, it's your right, but you haven't played him in 9 years. It's the Holy War. It was the most expensive ticket last weekend for a Big 12 game. I get it. It's a home game for Utah, the whole deal. It cannot be fun. But at the same point, yeah, you lost the game, but did you think you're going to win going into it? You weren't supposed to win. I mean, it's
I
tough.
think I think to me it's, hey, number one, if you are naive enough to think that Big 12 officials are not going to make certain calls, especially towards the end of the game, where it's more like a don't decide the game by the refs kind of situation. Typically, if you don't think they're going to protect the undefeated team that's projected to be the automatic have the fourth automatic bid for the playoff, I don't know what else to tell you. I don't think you may think, okay, well, it's because they were fired by the Pac-12. I think that's a stretch. I do think that at the end of the day, if you are naive enough to think that the Big 12 refs are not going to protect, they know who they work for. And at the end of the day, they're going to protect the team that is going to hold, as it stands with Iowa State taking another L, looks like they're the ones that are going to be holding the banner for the Big 12 in the postseason this year. So I'm sorry, Utah. I'm sorry, but not sorry. One, get used to it because the reffing here has been traditionally been atrocious. Two, is it questionable? Yeah. Is it going to happen in those situations? 100%. Sorry.
Yeah,
Chalk it up to an L.
it's an L for sure. But I know one team here who's not taking an L at all, and that's BYU, at least in the college football playoff standings as well too. They moved up to 6 here, and I mean they're unbeaten. They've beat ranked teams. I'm kind of scratching my head here a little bit because Indiana's still ranked ahead of them. But as you said last week, they've played one more game, which I do think matters a lot here. If you're one spot difference, okay, well, you played one more game. I'm fine with that being the reasoning, of you being ahead of the other team. If you play 10 games, the other team's played 9, there's not really much separating them. I'm fine with it being either one spot back if you played one less game. The the thing that I want to talk about here is that really the next teams that can make it into the college football playoff rankings outside of BYU, projected they go unbeaten here and went out the conference, is K-State and Colorado, which didn't think we'd be here with Colorado this late in the season. They of course, 2 losses, 7-2 here. One loss is to K-State. So they're definitely good rankings here as they're one spot behind K-State. But of those two teams, if you had to say which one do you like better here to play in the college football play in the the conference championship game against BYU?
Well, if you're talking about the college football huddle championship game, I definitely think it's going to be Colorado. KSU has had their opportunities, but they've had some stumbles along the way, and Colorado has found a way to win with big plays on both sides of the ball. Now, granted, this was a topic on our own podcast with regard to Colorado. Is Colorado, does it have the better athletes than everybody else in the Big 12? No, with the exception of the star athletes that they have, right? And those star athletes are enough of a difference to make the difference for them to win games. And lately they've been winning by not just, last year they lost a lot of games by less than one score. This year, they've been winning those games and winning by a little bit more than that. So to me, I think right now, from what I've seen between the two teams that you mentioned, I think Colorado takes the cake and is the more likely candidate to play in the championship game relative to KSU.
Yeah, from the athletic here, at least percentage wise, their projections of make the playoff, which it's just a stat you have to really throw out at the end of the day. However much sense you want to put into it is up to your own deciding here. But Colorado's 36% chance to make college football playoff, whereas K State has a 12% chance here, and K State still has 2 tough games here on their schedule here to end it out. Final one being against Iowa State, who has not shown to be great here down the stretch, but it still is Iowa State. It still is Farmageddon for all the fun college rival fans of rivalry game names. But yeah, I think I think we're splitting hairs here a little bit because I think K State's got definitely a way that they win games, and they could just keep keep beating teams, and all of a sudden they're in. They have the tiebreaker. They beat Colorado in the head-to-head. But then again, Colorado, one of their games against Oklahoma State here, it ended out, and I could real easily see them, of course, just killing Oklahoma State here at this point because I don't have much hope in us seeing a chance the rest of the season since we can't make a bowl game anymore as well. And then just be in the championship game just like that for the Big 12 championship at least. And then seeing where everything else ends up. I mean, it'll be real interesting here if Colorado or K-State or maybe even West Virginia, crazy enough, make it
ISU,
to that championship game.
ISU and ASU have that opportunity as well. So, it's kind of all over the place. We'll see what Cam Scatterby was out last week. That was a very frustrating game as a UCF fan. That's one of those where the moniker stats don't lie lied. And that's why you play the games, right? But at the end of the day, I do think ISU has an opportunity. I think K-State has an opportunity, and those teams, and Arizona State does. So really, you have, to me, 5 to 6 teams that can still vie for a Big 12 championship game. How realistic is it relative to that? I don't know. I've told you all season long that I thought ISU was a good team, but not a great team. They're good on both sides of the ball. They've won a lot of close games, which is a mark of a good team too. They just find ways to win, but it hasn't shaken their way the last couple of weeks. And I feel like from what I've seen of the teams that we mentioned, I think Colorado has the best shot right now versus BYU, and that's just my take on things. You mentioned the playoff real quick. One thing I did want to say to kind of inject there, you mentioned Indiana, right? And how they were ranked higher. However, remember with the playoff, it's the highest ranked conference champions that get the automatic buys. So based on what the playoff committee had put out in the most recent one, they also put out the seedings. So the first round bye right now would be Oregon as the number 1 seed, Texas as the number 2 seed, BYU as the number 3 seed, and Miami as the number 4 seed, which is interesting. None of your traditional, the SEC itself is not the dominant conference that it has been. The next first round matchups, which are the on-campus matchups, would be Notre Dame versus Tennessee. Winner plays Oregon. Ohio State versus Boise State. Winner plays Miami. Ole Miss versus Penn State. Winner plays BYU. Alabama versus IU. Winner plays Texas. Pretty interesting that there's no non-traditional SEC teams that are in the first round bye, considering Georgia is in that conference, Alabama's in that conference, etc. Georgia isn't even mentioned in here. There was some I'll call it propaganda that was put out by Heather Dinich today that was talking about the SEC and how a 3-loss SEC team should still be considered for the 12-team playoff. I'm sorry, but that's that. If you want to know anything about how this invitational, not playoff, and I'll call it an invitational, I'll continue to call it an invitational, is seeded and how they assign the rankings, it's by eyeballs. And they are looking for a team in the SEC, or to get as many teams as they can within the playoff that they own the rights for, wholly own the rights for, to be in this playoff. It is an invitational. It is not a playoff. Make no bones about it.
Yeah, I do want to say here. I know BYU would still be third, because Miami lost a game. But to me, this is more or less last week. Miami would have been third. So okay, all right, you got one spot change in there for BYU in all reality.
I wouldn't
But
argue
them
that
moving
though.
up to 6.
Miami's good. They lost a game, but they're still good. Last week, if you would have told me that, I could have very easily been okay with Miami being the 3 seed versus the 4.
Yeah, I just want to have this down here and make sure that my point is reiterated of BYU and Indiana, for that matter, jumping Tennessee when none of those three teams lost a game this past week does show me something here that the rankings are at least moving up, where if BYU was to lose in the championship game or were to lose down the stretch here as well, that it would be okay, maybe they could still get in because they're just moving up. When in all reality, yeah, they were going to move up no matter what last week because teams in front of them lost games, but they did jump a couple of teams that didn't lose a game, which helps out a ton too for their standings here in case something did happen where something didn't shake their way and they had a really close loss, to another team down here with the last three games of the season coming up here for BYU. So that's what I want to really state here. Now, is it still weird to me that BYU is ranked sixth and we have Texas all the way up here at three? Sure, but I'm not going to really just try to dice it all up here that much because in the day, Texas is playing in the SEC and they're racking up wins, and BYU is playing the Big 12 and they're racking up wins. And if both teams keep winning out, they'll both make it. So all good. I'm not trying to be too on a high horse here of, oh, BYU should be ranked higher because Georgia's only one good game they played. They got killed by a now what and 12th ranked team here in Georgia. So I'm
What
not
it
trying to get
really
too much in the weeds here for projections because it won't matter here at the end. Both
well
teams
what
win and we'll be good.
what it really matters for, remember, what it really matters for this year is the extra teams that are in the first round, right? Because in this year, which is still under the old playoff system, it's the top rated conference P5 champions, which is now the P4 because the Pac-12 has been stripped of their status because of the exodus that happened there. So no matter what, whoever wins the Big 12 championship will be and have a first round bye, which really all we're talking about as far as the rankings is who else is in the first round buys. And in that case, you've got one, two, three SEC teams, and you've got 1, 2, 3 Big Ten teams. And the rest is Boise State, which is the G5 representative, right? And then you've got Notre Dame, which I don't know why they're in, other than eyeballs. That's the only reason you have them where they are right now.
Well, the reason why they're in is what you just went on and ran about the TV networks. How it's an invitational, right? That's
Yep.
sweet. I think anyone knows that they have by far and away the worst loss of any team in the top 12. And they also do not have a good win to go off of, but they'll play Army down the stretch, so that should do
I don't even think they
something
have a ranked
theoretically.
win, do they? I don't think
I
Notre Dame has a ranked win.
I don't think so either. That you would think going down the stretch here that they'd have to play somebody, but they don't. They don't ever have to play anyone because they're not in a conference. They're affiliated for other sports, but for football, they'll play USC one week, they'll play Penn State another week, and then other years they'll play Army and they'll play, Northern Illinois and whoever else, right? So I don't have the Notre Dame schedule memorized. I'm sorry, but it just is one of those things. The fun thing though, I think I could add on here about the Big 12 championship game is that currently a 5-4 West Virginia team could make it to the championship game and into the playoffs. And listen, a 4-loss team making it to the playoffs would really show everyone, hey, maybe this playoff thing is a little dumb. Maybe 12 was too many. But then again, I'm always down to watch more college football, and it's not the expense of myself here. It's the athletes on the field who are getting paid now, too. So I feel good about watching the games. I do feel like there's going to be some point, definitely a Big 12 team or two are going to get screwed. But I'll be mad about that if that happens or when it happens, more or less. West Virginia down the stretch here, their final three games are hosting Baylor this weekend. Then they host your Knights, as I'm sure you know, on the 23rd. And after that, they play Tech at Tech. But for this to happen, one, they have to win out. And two, they have to have K-State or Colorado lose two of their final three games. So they really have to have a couple things to go their way. They also have to worry about their own schedule here with three more Big 12 games against teams with a winning record in the Big 12 too, down the stretch. So woulda, coulda, shoulda. I don't think this is going to happen, but it's a fun thing that we could possibly potentially see of a Big 12 team get an automatic bid of the championship game winner. And if West Virginia wins out, all of a sudden they're 7-4 heading to the championship game, possibly 8-4 they beat the championship team, and their only losses this year are to to K-State and Pittsburgh. So and in Penn State,
Echoes of the
excuse.
Big
Well, they have
East.
4 losses, but yeah, still, I mean, in conference losses it's just Iowa State and K-State here. So, yeah, it it could happen. It could happen. Want to throw it out there.
It could happen. I mean, for statistically, it could happen. Statistically, it's not likely to happen. So, for West Virginia fans, you're still playing. The advantage you do have is you have 2 games in the fall or winter, really, at home. West Virginia does have a great environment at home. They West Virginia fans show out. They're loud. They're proud. It's one of the harder places to win, and it's going to be cold, which for us Southern teams obviously isn't advantageous because we don't like the cold. That's why we play. That's why we moved to the South. That being said, now Calvin, you've got me saying it now all the time. I do think it's going to be very difficult for West Virginia to win. Baylor's resurgent. They've been building and looking better week after week. For us, our offense, we finally found it. We should have beaten ASU. It seems like I felt like I've said that all year long. There were some 2 really fluky special teams plays that allowed them to stay in it. And then their final game is against who again?
Oh man, I just closed that window, but their final game is it's an away game. It's at Tech, I believe.
Yeah, at Tech. And I think Tech has the offense to be able to win that game. So, if they do win out to make it to the championship game, they will have accomplished a lot and be on a hot streak. And we'll see, but I don't see it happening for West Virginia fans, and hopefully UCF fans. And I'm sorry for this. Hopefully UCF will, because we will have a fairly decent contingent going to that game. We'll be there to put an end to that possibility for West Virginia. We got to go 1-0 against the bye this week, though.
Yeah, got to win the bye week first. I know we're probably not going to at Oklahoma State here, but do want to say, just as currently as the projections are, and if everything ended today, which of course it does not, basically the winner of the Ole Miss, the number 11 versus number 6 game, Ole Miss at Penn State would play BYU. So that's how it breaks down right now here for the first round matchups that are on campus. I mean, Ole Miss would play at Penn State, and then the winner would play in one of the premier bowl game sites here of Orange Bowl, Rose Bowl, etc., Sugar Bowl, etc., and play those out. So I just only thing I'm going to be annoyed about a little bit here from the cultural playoffs is that, man, that BYU campus is just gorgeous seeing a football game there. I mean, granted, I've only seen it on TV so far, but there's several other Big 12 teams that in the future, hope for fingers crossed here are in the top 12, just so we see some of the Big 12 campus and college sites. Because I know last year it's very annoying how Oklahoma State played in Central Florida, your guys' stadium there in Orlando, but was
Same
it
way
cool
with
seeing the
Arizona this
stadium at
year.
least? Yeah.
Yeah, same
Yeah.
way with Arizona. Yeah, they
Yeah.
got the space
Space
game
game. Yeah.
treatment. Yeah, so complete with the rain. They got the complete experience.
Oh man, well they did not fare any better this year than we did last year. But I do want to say, I know you guys are faring pretty darn well right now in some basketball. Right now, aren't you guys undefeated in conference as well as
we
most of the Big 12 teams, unless you get
yeah
to play the
we're
tough
we're
tough opponent?
we're undefeated out of conference, actually. So as are most of the teams, everybody but Houston and Baylor. And Houston, unfortunately, they did play against Auburn and were beaten by Auburn, which Auburn is actually a pretty good team and is expected to vie for at least a Sweet 16, if not an Elite Eight. Um, um, berth. Baylor, kind of a surprise. They are ranked number 12 even after their loss to Gonzaga. Gonzaga looks like a hot team this year, but I expected Baylor to play better against Gonzaga. as far as the rest of the Big 12 is concerned, everybody else has won all their out of conference games. Is part of the reason why the Big 12 is so vaunted as far as a basketball conference. It's also the reason why you may have 8 teams, some of them with either an even 500 record or one that is a losing record that could make the tournament this year. So right now we have 6 ranked teams. You have number 1 Kansas, number 7 ISU. ISU's having a great time with their athletics recently. Number 8 Houston, despite losing. Number 9, so that was a quality loss, I guess, against Gonzaga. Number 9 Arizona. So Pac-12 bringing a little bit to us. Number 12 Baylor, and number 17 Cincinnati. You mentioned us. We are the last ranking. We got 20 votes in the AP, ranked 35. That was before a big win against FAU, which I know that doesn't sound great, but FAU was actually a higher seeded team in the net and also other preseason rankings. They played great. They had a lot of turnover. Got to see them live. They're playing a great offense and can shoot threes. And we're a real threat to beat us. But we also beat, a team that seems to disappoint the SEC and its fans, Texas A&M, yearly. They were ranked number 13 when we played them, defeated them, and they're expected to be an Elite 8 team. So the conference is stacked yet again. We are proving why we are the SEC of basketball. And I expect that we'll be vying for a conference champion or a national championship against the likes of someone like Connecticut by year's end. So the Big 12, again, super hot basketball, great week in, week out basketball. You're not going to see, once we get in conference, you're not going to see bad basketball in the Big 12. So watch it. You're going to see a lot of different systems that are being played, a lot of battles that are being played, and it's really, really fun hoops. And I definitely recommend watching it. But so far, Big 12 is doing really, really well, and we won't see a real challenge. We've got one more game before we play Wisconsin, who's also slated to be a good team this year from the Big 10. And so hopefully we continue to bear the standard for the Big 12 as well as the other teams have.
Yeah, here in Stillwater, Oklahoma, we've played 2 games against 2 teams I've already talked about here. And our next game that we play that's really against anyone of any, I'd say, substance or could be some tougher team is actually we play a familiar foe to you guys. We play FAU here on the 21st here, a little bit more than a week away. But then after that, we play the winner of Drake versus Miami as part of that same kind of tournament matchup here that we play FAU in Charleston. So we'll Cowboys have some tough games coming up here, and after that, not too far away, we play our Bedlam matchup, of course, against OU. And I don't know how good they're supposed to be, but I'm hoping not that good because I don't think we're going to fare too well here in our whole new deal in the Big 12.
Well,
Basically, we're
you guys
been in the Big
haven't.
12 for a while, but 3 guys returning from the roster from last year, brand new head coach coming over from Big Red Western Kentucky, and hey, Western Kentucky Hilltoppers, they only have great things, especially their podcast. I had them on my podcast here earlier this year, right after we hired Steve Lutz. Is they've only got great things to say about him as a man, but also just really as a coach. They had him on an episode of their podcast not too long ago, so they did get to kind of interview him there and learn a lot about him. He's only said great things, and for anyone who's an Oklahoma State fan or has heard of Mike Gundy press conference as of late, Steve Lutz is a very, very truthful and honest gentleman when it comes to his press conferences. He is calling it like it is, and he is mad and really kind of seems like pissed off, turned off, whatever you want to say, to how the team's been playing so far. Even though they're 2-0, it's just not been winning the way that he wants them to, and it's been letting the other 2 teams we played who have not had too much substance so far score a lot of points. So I really love that. And then talk about it as you already touched on. KU number 1 in the number 1 in the nation. Arizona is always going to be in the mix. Baylor's always going to be in the mix. Houston's always going to be in the mix. And then Heck, you guys with your signature win here in the Big 12 so far, in a non-conference game, already making, ESPN and Fox, sports, all type of stuff here for UCF repping the conference well early on. So it's been great to see.
It's a quad one win, which is a good resume builder. And the thing about it is, and I want to say this again, is the better we do collectively as a conference, right? In the out of conference, the better it is when we start beating each other up when it comes to conference play. It's very similar. And the reason I use the SEC, if the football season was longer, you'd see more of this. But in basketball, basically what you're doing is you're tuning up your teams for the conference, and because the conference is viewed as being a true power conference, almost full of not full of blue bloods because we don't have as many blue bloods anymore, but a solid conference that is determined by the out of conference play, which then ties into the strength of schedule, which ties into everything else. So for us, I'm enjoying the heck out of being a Big 12 team. It's given us the ability to attract better names than we would have ever before. C, we're not playing in a one to two bid league anymore in the American Conference. Which means that there's more opportunity out there, and the season isn't over if you lose a game, right? So for Big 12 fans, that means all Big 12 fans should be excited, because once we get into conference play, it still matters, and your season still matters, even if you lose or go 500 in conference. So the more our teams can do in the out of conference, the better off it'll be, and a lot more fun it is. And that's why the Big 12 is the best basketball conference in the nation. And I'll say that bar none, in spite of not winning the national championship the past couple of years. But great conference, great teams, a lot of really good basketball. I played semi-pro basketball in Europe. I can tell you, watching the teams play, seeing the adjustments that are made, seeing the different strategies that are played, the basketball IQ of the coaches and the basketball IQ of the players is much, much higher than you'll see anywhere else. So enjoy this. Make sure you're watching Big 12 basketball. If you're not, there's a reason why it's one of the most rabid fan bases of all the conferences that are out there.
Yeah, and besides UConn, the Big 12 is the most recent team to win the national championship. Actually, 2 years in a row in 21 and 22, with it being Baylor and KU respectively there. So
Yep.
it's definitely the best one, and especially just to further add on to your point here, it's got to be the best one because West Virginia preseason ranked 12th to finish in the conference. So even when there's a down year, you're like, oh man, all right, well maybe we'll win it this year. Oh wait, we've got to play West Virginia. Oh my gosh, they're not even supposed to be good. And still, it's always going up against a very tough foe every single night. It truly is a gauntlet of a conference, and it is very comparable, I'd say, yeah, to the SEC there in football, where it really is. Um, it's a conference where I can say, hey, Oklahoma State, I don't think we're gonna be that good this year. But I think in other years, or maybe in other conferences, a better way to say it, excuse me, we'd be okay with a really good coach and a new whole team coming in, just because you wouldn't have the same guys on tape or whatever it may be. But we might get a win or two in conference this year, might get a couple wins here and there, but we're going to be trying to beat, the Colorado and Utah is the only two teams faced, picked to finish worse than us in the Big 12, preseason wise, at least. So we'll see how it all works out. But I mean, there's so many teams in conference, and two, there's just so many good teams that it really is going to be schedule dependent here on how many times you have to play each team. Because no matter what, you're playing every single team at least once. And so, but some teams are playing twice. And heck, we got to play KU twice. We get that short straw, but there's really not a good story or draw because there are so many good teams, as you said. So,
Yeah, KU we get actually twice this year. Last year we only got them once, and we did beat them last year at home. But we do get to play them home and away. And here's the thing too, right? KU, if you go to the arena at KU, it is literal basketball history. right? So when you talk about history and everything else, and then for the Pac-12 editions, um, Arizona is a blue blood in basketball. They may not be much in football, and they haven't been great for long stretches of time. There were some times that they were great for 8 years, 6, 7, 8 years at a time, but basketball, they are a true blue blood, and that was a bonus for um, Big 12 basketball. The other thing that I'll say on basketball as well, and I know we're talking a lot about hoops, but this is, we'll do a preview show once we get into conference and really, really detail out once we've seen these teams a little bit better on what we're expecting in conference. But the other thing I'll say about Big 12 basketball, even teams like BYU, which are not traditional powers, last year were I think they made it to the Sweet 16 last year. So this teams that you don't see that are ranked coming into this season there's going to be one or two teams that surprise you and make a run into the tournament. And you're watching basically tournament level basketball all year long. So we've kind of replaced what the Big East was back in the 80s and 90s. The Big 12 has kind of become that. And, the SEC's got some good teams this year too, but nothing like the Big 12. So just enjoy it, folks. As a UCF fan, it's fun to be able to transition to a sport that is fun to watch. And we've got a good team this year made up of a lot of good players that can score the paint as well as play defense. And so that makes for a fun season all year long. So enjoy it. Watch the teams play out of conference because it's going to be a heck of a conference. And the environment in the Big 12, go to Big 12 basketball games because the environment is 10 times better than it is in any other conference in the country as far as arenas are concerned. And you're right on top of the action instead of 50 rows up or 60 rows up from the field.
Yeah, the Big 12 is definitely the conference where, man, if I want to watch some really good environments to see some highly competitive games, it seems as though every single student section is really packed out and really into the games for hoops. They're not just seeing some guys stroll in, which always annoyed the crap out of me watching USC and UCLA. I lived in Southern California for the past couple of years of just where are the guys? I mean, yeah, I get you got Bronny James. He's probably not the biggest draw in the entire world because of who he is, but maybe because of his dad. But UCLA with Mick Cronin and all the stuff here, you're talking about conference where no matter what, the fans are in the stands and they are right on top of the players every single night. Gallagher Iba is insane place to play, especially when it's just packed to the brim. And I think it'll be packed to the brim for a couple of games this year because of all the excitement of the new coach on campus, and can't wait to see that as well. I do want to talk about some more excitement though in the Big 12 here as we kind of wrap this one up a little bit, which is Big 12 soccer. Just want to say shout out to KU, where preseason wise, they're not projected to finish top of the Big 12, maybe not top half of Big 12, but they won the conference championship game in Kansas City this past weekend. And there are 7 different Big 12 teams here. And I know it's women's soccer, but I do want to give the shout out here as well that hey, there's 7 different teams playing in the NCAA championship in the first round here coming up this weekend. So it's actually coming up Friday. And that's just an incredible thing as well, too. Just both really, really well. It's the conference overall as a whole, and really just shows how deep the conference is in every single sport, it seems. I mean,
Yeah,
football may not be
soccer
the deepest
especially.
by far, but you know what? I mean, heck, can I touch on wrestling for a couple more seconds? I'm just kidding. But really,
Well, I mean,
for every sport, where the Big 12 runs pretty darn deep. Baseball is definitely one, softball for
soccer,
sure every single year.
both
Soccer,
teams,
yeah.
volleyball. Volleyball's got a lot of really, really highly ranked teams as well. So you're right. I mean, when you're talking about the quality of the sports, it's a great conference to be in, and I'm glad and a proud member of the Big 12 conference, in spite of what Mark Harlan, I can't even say his name anymore, the former Cows AD says about the refs.
There we go. Yeah, I got it. Got to bring it full circle though, but I got to say I love it no matter what. Yeah, I mean, last year we had Cincinnati play Baylor, and one of the championship games there in women's soccer. So it's just no matter what. It's always something going on in Big 12. I know that's every conference probably at the end of the day, but I do always want to shout out the teams that are playing really well. And KU's got one heck of an incredible story with a brand new head coach this year in women's soccer. And in the first year, going to the championship and winning is a record in the Big 12. That was not done before by previous other teams there. So shout out to them. Wish the Oklahoma State Cowgirls had done a little bit better, but hey, you could redeem yourselves a little bit here this weekend here with first round of championship play coming up here with the bracket challenge. So other things I want to talk to you about here is coming for this weekend with the Big 12 kind of schedule here in football as we wrap this one out. Is there any game that jumps off the page here? I know both of our teams are not playing, and I'm definitely putting you on the spot here, maybe in a bad spot as well too, of picking up the Big 12 schedule for this weekend and going, hey, you know what? I think this matchup is going to be the most interesting one to watch, or the surprise upset of the week. Either way, anything that catches your eye here for this weekend's games?
I think there's 3 really good games to watch this week. You're going to have, and they start at different times. There's a little bit of an overlap. But the reason you should understand how good these games are going to be, one is going to be on ESPN. The other one's going to be Fox. I'm not saying ESPN2. I'm not saying ESPN Plus. I'm talking about the mainline ESPN, right? So I think Baylor and West Virginia is going to be a better game than most people thought it was going to be earlier in the season. I think that Baylor's going to win this game, although they are playing in Morgantown. So I'm going to pick Baylor in this game. Their defense has been playing really well, and their offense has been coming along. They've been getting better week in and week out. Arizona State, Kansas State, I think is going to be a good game if, and this is a big if, Scattaboo comes back. I think Arizona State's defense is about the same level as what Kansas State's defense is, so it's going to be really a battle of the offensive lines. And then Cincinnati, Iowa State's going to be another good one too. I know with a 7-2 record versus a 5-4 record, and playing at Jack Trice Stadium, you wouldn't expect this to be a good game. But Iowa State's been on a slide, and like I said, even when we played, and you asked me who were the 2 teams between BYU and Iowa State, I still think that Iowa State's one of those teams that could lose any given weekend. So Cincinnati's been better than most expected. They did lose last week unexpectedly for me. But I think that out of those 3, I'm going to say that I think Baylor and West Virginia might be the best game to watch. And I think Kansas State and Arizona State is going to be a very interesting game to watch and has conference ramifications. So those are my 2 picks for this week. What do you think?
I definitely was trying to pre-up you there for that A-State, K-State matchup there with the 2 schools that have been really running the football extremely well. Avery Johnson was joked as being the guy who's a running back who could throw, and it seems as though he's proven to be a guy who can throw a little bit more than just a little bit. So, yeah, that definitely Arizona State, K-State, 6 p.m. Central on ESPN. I think that's a great game to watch, and that's the one I was really going after. Baylor, West Virginia, though, does catch my eye a little bit. I was also going to just say, Utah, Colorado. Is there a little of just Colorado's maybe a little bit of a paper tiger? Is there a chance they could have not played the toughest schedule so far and just played maybe K-State really close? So
I don't think
Utah,
so.
I don't think stands a chance, but I do want to say earlier games in the Big 12, especially when it's 11 a.m. Central, so what, it's 10 a.m. Mountain Time, it could be interesting. It's going to be 10 a.m. in Boulder. No matter what, it'll be an interesting game. That's the takeaway I have, especially when Utah ends their game last week the way it does. Either they're going to come out and absolutely just fold up like a chair at a sports game, or they're going to stand tough and hold it down to the very end and possibly pull it out with a win for the Utes. Not that I'm projecting that necessarily, but I do think that either they're going to come out with one heck of some fire and passion burning in their souls, or they're going to just absolutely fold it up.
Well, here's the thing for Utah. Utah seems to have found a quarterback. They were kind of listless there for a while. their defense has played better, and they seem to have found a quarterback that can make a difference and at least allow them to score. So, are they putting up big numbers? No. Were they putting up big numbers with their octogenarian quarterback from last year? That was supposed to be their savior again this year. Now that he's back and off of injury, again, no. But that means that Utah is a dangerous team because they have a good defense, and they are definitely playing better and have found a quarterback that can move the ball the last week. So it'll be interesting, but I still think that Baylor, West Virginia will be the more entertaining game, and I think Arizona and K-State is the game that has the best implications. It's not just for the records, but to me, it's implications because if K-State loses this game, it'll be really interesting to see what happens. Arizona State also, it will be really interesting because then they are in the thick of it for the championship game as well, heading into the last week or last couple weeks of the season. So I think that one is the one to watch as far as implications for the Big 12 championship this year.
Totally agree there. And hey, Scottaboo's been practicing this week. I know firsthand from seeing him play in Stillwater how good he is and what a force that Arizona State team is when they've got him going at full strength as well. So no knocks on that Arizona State team whatsoever. And you know what? I mean, maybe K-State just kind of has the tiebreaker here because they're the home team. But I don't know. I would not be a guy putting down money on that team, on either of those two teams. Either way, I just think it's a total toss.
I will say this: the place that I would not want to be playing this weekend, having played football, is in Boulder, Colorado, at game time at 10 a.m. in 46-degree weather. I can tell you, every time you hit somebody, it just hurts more. The SEC, it means more. In cold weather, it just hurts more when you hit somebody.
Yeah, I've definitely played outside a little bit when it's been freezing cold and played some football growing up there. So I know what you mean. Of course, my skill level is way less than yours. But with that being said, here I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the podcast with my famous catchphrase. And Roger, any other things here to add on here before we wrap this podcast up?
No, I think we talked a lot about hoops. I encourage everyone to keep an eye out on your favorite team in the Big 12. Check out some of the other teams because there's some really high level basketball being played. And as far as football is concerned, I'm going to be watching a lot of other teams play this weekend because obviously we're not playing. But there's some three entertaining games for you to choose from. And entertainment for me from 4 p.m. All the way to 8 p.m. for kickoffs. So there's a lot of good Big 12 football to watch, entertaining football to watch, and soon enough we won't have any football to watch. So make sure you enjoy it now, even if your team's frustrating you right now. And go Knights.
And go Pokes. Last thing I'll add on here is that if Arizona State wins this weekend, all of a sudden next weekend that BYU Arizona State game at 2:30 becomes a lot more interesting, especially BYU at Arizona State. So one on that one here. Go Pokes. Please follow at the CGA Tour on Twitter, Instagram, wherever you listen to your podcast. If you're an Oklahoma State fan or just want to know what Oklahoma State fan thinks about everything going on in the Big 12 right now. Follow at Night Bengal on Twitter as well too here to get all updates for the UCF podcast, the Night at One's podcast, and make sure you subscribe to Big 12 Huddle here. Thanks for all the new listeners, followers, watchers, whatever it may be, because all the podcasts are now on iTunes and Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts here. Links in the description as well too. So that's all from me here, folks, and we'll catch you guys again next week.